promise you're not going to tell anybody else, all right? You promise. Promise you hope to die. One day I went and I stole some money out of my mother's purse because I wanted to find out what smoking was like. And I went down to the store and I got a big boy who was old enough to buy some cigarettes. And I went up an anthill and I went under a bush and I smoked some cigarettes, but it was terrible. I remember smoking those cigarettes, and then my dad found out. And so he said, go to the bathroom, the toilet. And I sat in the toilet, and I knew that he was going to bring the stick, and he was going to apply the stick to the part as my education is down here. And so I was very fearful, and he came in, and he sat down on the bathtub next to me, and he looked at me and he said, Gary, and then the tears began to flow down his cheeks. He said, you have broken my heart. I didn't think that you were like that. And then he got up and he walked out. And in my heart I was saying, oh Dad, beat me, please, beat me. That is much more painful than this. So I apologized to my mother and father. So that was one bad thing that I did, but it was a good lesson in it.
That's right. How many of you would like a dad like that who would just come and say, you've broken my heart by what you did? How many of you want to be such a dad?
We were driving down the road, just up the road here, by a place called Namagunga.
You're going to hear this, children, you're going to hear this.
At Namagunga. And as we were coming back towards Kampala, there was a truck coming on the other side of the road. And the roads were terrible. In those days, the potholes were everywhere. Garbage in the potholes. We used to have a joke. If the children are swimming in the potholes, it's too big to drive through. and so we came around the corner, and here was this army truck coming, a truck coming. And there was an army truck that was overtaking and coming down my side of the road, straight towards us with soldiers inside. And so they weren't going to move. I had to go off the road. And when I went off the road in those days was very jagged on the side. And I remember I went down on the side of the road and I tried to keep the car going straight on the road, and then the wheels hit the side of the road and they began to spin around this, and I tried to make it straight, and then the car went to the other side of the road and there was a ditch with a bit of a hill. And the car went down into that ditch, and the back side of the car came right up into the air. And I remember at that time also thinking, like when I was waiting for that bullet, I think I'm going to die. And everything was quiet because the car was across, and then it was quiet because the car was in the air. It wasn't touching anything. And the next thing I heard the crash, and I felt myself going down the road, the middle of the road, on my back, just sliding on the road, and my shirt was all peeled off. And then I rolled over onto my stomach, and I watched in the car. I remember it so clearly. It was going down the middle of the road on its roof, and there were sparks flying out of each side of the car. And I said, I'm alive, but what about my family? So I got up and I began to stumble towards, because I was hurting a bit, and I noticed my one shoe was missing, and I used to wear spectacles in those days. They were gone, and so I ran to the car, and my son James was lying on the road, and he was crying, and so someone picked him up and began to run with him towards some place, and I was worried. And they said, it's okay. There's a school here. I'm going to take your son. You'll be just fine, and we'll help you. And so I went around the side of the car, and it was a Peugeot 504, and the roof was right down to the gear lever. It was flat. And so I thought, I wonder if my wife, Marilyn, is alive. I said, Marilyn. And she said to me, Gary, get me out of here. And that was the first time I was willing to really obey my wife immediately. And so she crawled out from underneath the car, And we stood up, and she had a big cut on her arm. If you see her today, you look at this arm. There's a big wound on this side. You can still see it. It's from that accident. And then, once we were out of the car, the people on the side of the roads had run from all of the houses around, and they rocked the car, and then they rolled the car onto its wheels. And I'll never forget this. They began to reach inside the car and began to steal all of our things. And a boldness came over me. I thought, here I am, I've had an accident. I could be dead. And the people, Uganda people around me don't even care. They just want to steal my things. And so I said, stop now. And everybody stopped, and I stood back like this, and they looked at me. I said, excuse me, my shoe is missing, and my spectacles. I would like to have them now, please. And the man gave me my shoe, and the man gave me my spectacles, and then some nuns came, because there's a school right there. And they said, hello, Mr. Skinner, I found my name, Mr. Skinner. Please don't worry about the car. We will look after it. Just come with us. We want to help you. So we went up to the school, and we sat in this room, and there was blood and all this kind of thing. And so James said to me, he said, Dad, pray for me. And so we prayed a prayer fast. And then they took us into the hospital in Zambia Hospital, which was a Catholic hospital, and we were there overnight. I had broken all my ribs. This was actually 2 weeks before we started the church. And I had broken my ribs. So I had to stay in bed up until the day that we started the church, because I wasn't going to change the plans. And they took some little stones out of my son's head that had gone in his vinegar. So the next day, when I got home, our missions director came to visit us from Nairobi. And he said to me, to comfort us and help us, he said, have you looked at the missionary prayer calendar? I said, no. In those days, we used to have, on every day, there was a different missionary whose picture was there. And then all the people in Canada, they would pray that day for that missionary. He said, you see them, whose picture? And on the day of the accident, it was my picture. That was it. There were tens of thousands of people who were praying for us, who had no idea what was going on. And so then I got letters for the next 3 months people telling me they were praying for me. One of them was a boy that was in the church, young man. He'd been in drugs, he got saved, he got into the youth, he went to Bible school. He was in Bible school. They were having the chapel service at about 11 o'clock, 10 o'clock, and the preacher was preaching. And he stood up. He said, excuse me, we have to stop. We have to pray for Gary Skinner in Kampala right now. I don't know why. We have to pray. And we found out that the time that they stopped and they prayed was the very time that we were going through the accident. So, my grandfather, that night before, on Tuesday it was, they had Bible study in their church, and the preacher didn't come. So that never happens. They said, well, let's just turn it into a prayer meeting. So that prayer meeting prayed, and they specifically prayed for us. There's about 6 stories like that. So I knew that even though I was going through the fire, in the middle of the fire, God was with me in the fire.
Jesus praise. Jesus praise. Even in the midst of the fire, He's still with us.
And so anyway, so that was what Uganda was like. Very, very difficult. And I must tell you that there were 10,000 times that I was ready to give up. I was ready to go. But there was one thing that kept me here. Those kind of miracles, over and over. God said to me, don't be afraid. Do what you've been told to do. I'm with you. I'll see you through. One more story. We were sitting at home, and it was the supper time, and we were eating, and two men walked into our house, and they had guns. And then there was two other men behind them. And so they walked into our house, and the one man walked around the table, and he had a pistol, and he put the pistol in the side of my head, and he said, "Money. We want money now, all the money." I said to him, "It's okay, don't worry, we'll give you everything that we have." He said, "Don't speak to me, just get the money." And there was another man who was in charge. He said, "Just shoot him, the wife will give the money. Just shoot him." But anyway, I said, "No, let me get the money." So I got up and said, "It's in the office here." So you always kept some money in those days. Thieves' money. If they came and they didn't get anything, they'd kill you. But if you gave them at least something, you might be right. So I went to get the money and it was locked in a filing cabinet. But I didn't have the key. When I got in there, I remembered I don't have the key. I said, "Oh, I'm sorry, the key is in the other side of the house." He said, "Get down, lie on your face between these doors." And there was a door between the office and there was a toilet, the washroom, the bath. So I laid in those doors, looking the other way into the toilet. And they brought the rest of the family, they brought my wife, she got the keys, they opened it up, and then they went through the house and they collected everything. And then they tied us all up with electrical cables, here, not here, and like this, so we knew they were soldiers. And then they said to my wife, they said, "Get up." And she said, "I can't. How can I get up? I can't. I'm tired." So they just pulled her onto her feet like this. And they said, "More money. This is not enough money. You have more money. Pounds, dollars, shillings, everything. Or we're going to kill you." She said, "I have no more. We have no more money. You can shoot me if you like to, if you want to, but there's no more money." And I thought, "Marilyn, don't say that. The gun is at my head." There was a man sitting with the gun at my head. And so the man said, "Shoot her husband." And so I was on the floor, Marilyn was watching, the man cocked the gun, pulled the trigger, nothing happened. I said, "Shoot him." He cocked the gun again, click, click, nothing happened. He said, "Shoot him." Click. He said, "I can't, I don't know I can't." And then the man said to my wife, he said, "Are you people Christians?" And Marilyn said, "Of course we're Christians, we're pastors, we're missionaries." It was like there was a blanket of confusion. It was like confusion came on. You could see them just go like this. And then they literally grabbed the things they had and they ran out of our house. Ran out of our house. Wow. So it was a miracle. It was a fight. You know, and those things were trying. They were difficult. You want to go home. You want to give up. James, our youngest son, when they came and they took them to the office, he laid down on the chair because he was small, and he put the tablecloth over himself, and they didn't see him. So he was lying on the chair under the table, and they didn't see him. But he saw the men going by. He heard all of this, and then afterwards we were finished. We were getting up. And I said, "Okay, let's finish supper." My wife said, "How can you finish supper when you're just about, you know?" I said, "It's behind us. What can we do? Let's move on." So we were sitting around the table, and I said to James, "James, what were you thinking when you heard what these people were saying?" And then he said, this is what he said. He said, I was praying two things. Dear God, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. Forgive them. They don't know. It's only about 4, 5, 6. Some were 4. And then he said, what were you going to do if they killed us all? And I said, well, I was going to go to the neighbors and get a telephone, and I was going to phone my grandma and my grandpa in Canada and say, Grandpa, they just killed Mom and Dad, can you come and get me? So that son is now here in college. One more story. There's so many stories. Another time we were at home. Same thing. We were eating. And the soldiers came in, put the guns at our heads, and they told us to lie on the floor. And we had visitors, 2 visitors from Mbale, and a man who had never been to Uganda in his life. And he was coming to set up a crusade for a man called Selwyn Hughes, who used to do Every Day for Jesus. His first day in Uganda, And so the men came and they put the guns at our heads and they said, everybody put your heads on the table. And the man looked at me like he was at the other side of the table, like it was a joke. I said, put your head on the table. He put his head on the table. And then they said, get on the floor. We got on the floor. Under the table. We were under the table. And I can still see my guests and all of us lying under the table like this, wondering if they were going to shoot us. And the men walked by and someone, I remember looking, the man said, if you look one more time, I'm going to shoot you right now. So we're all lying there. It took an hour and a half. The men were in the house. They stole everything, put it inside our car. We had the Pajero. It was a Pajero. Then it was a different car. And it was a diesel. And it was in the garage. So you had to warm up the diesel, and then you had to turn it on in those days. And I had a steep driveway. So I heard them walk out of the house. It became quiet. And they started the car. I thought if they don't start the car, I'm in trouble. Anyway, the car started. Then they tried to back up the driveway, full of everything from our house in the car. And they stalled it. And it rolled down. And I heard again. I said, please, Jesus, start the car. But anyway, the car went up, started, and they drove away. And so we got up. They didn't tie us that time. And I went to the phone to see if so I wanted to phone the police. Because by this time, Mr. Museveni was in government, the security was much better, they had patrols and so on. And so I wanted to phone the police. And they had taken the telephone and they ripped it out of the wall. So I didn't have it. There were no cell phones in those days. But there was a fax machine that they didn't see, and it had a telephone. So I phoned the police. And in those days, this is the truth. If you phoned the police earlier, before that, they would say, oh yeah, Mr. Skinner, you have robbery, various things, we have no transport, we're coming on foot. And they would take 2 hours, 3 hours, Anyway, they said, we'll be there. And in 10 minutes, the patrol came into the lane. And so they asked me the questions and so on. And they said, excuse me, Mr. Skinner, we just heard. They've seen the vehicle down the road. We'll be back. And so they drove off. About an hour later, they came back and they said, you won't be having any more problems with those people. And I said, oh, what happened? He said, we found them, we caught them. And they're all dead. I said, what? He said, yeah, we came up behind them and we tried to get them to stop, but they wouldn't stop, so we shot inside the car and we hit the driver and then we shot the guy in the passenger seat and you can come for your vehicle sometime this week as an investigation. But they were all dead. And so I learned that you don't mess with God's people because you end up dead. you end up dead. We have one of our choir members. He's a great young man. He's Kenneth. He's a great cell leader. Monica. His brother was in the police radio station. And he had been shot by thieves. And he's a cripple. He can't walk. And when he heard the police, he said, that's my brother's pastor. I'm going to get these people. So he was the one that pushed it through and went through. So, in every one of those fire circumstances, God was with us.
Amazing. I want to go to the pastor's feet. If we can get the church, we're going to start ourselves over here. And as the other pastors come, they will hear their stories on how God touched them and connected them to Watoto Church. How many of you think Watoto Church is quite a great church? How many of you would like to hear some more about what makes Watoto Church? You'd like to hear? And I'm going to ask Gary to share a little bit on that. Then we're going to hear from the pastors how they met Jesus as they were young people and how they met Watoto Church. And then finally, Pastor Gary, you're going to hear this one here. Pastor Gary is going to tell you what he sees God has placed in his heart concerning the future. And Pastor Gary is also going to pray for us. How many of you would like to get a prayer from the Father? So let's have it a little. Pastor Gary, I know we see Watoto Church today but it wasn't like this all the time. What are those things that you like to say, these are the things that have made Watoto Church who Watoto Church is?
Yes. You know, there are many things that makes Watoto Church today. We focus on the Word, we focus on the worship, and we expect the wonders, the miracles of God. And when you're faithful with the worship, and then you preach the Word, there will be wonders, there will be miracles. We focus on that. We focus on, one of the things that God put in my heart was that we had to change the nation. We had to change the country. It couldn't stay the same. And so, we don't do anything in Watoto Church, but we do it excellently. If we can't do it excellently, we should not do it. God deserves the very best. So we don't like to see dirt and garbage and rubbish and broken windows and all of the things that we see around us. But we don't want that to be something for the church. We want that to be something for the entire nation. We want to change the nation. And it begins with the heart. So I determined very early that the future, I'm not here to build a church so that Pastor Gary can be the big man in town, drive the big car, and be known as super pastor. That was not my focus. My focus was to transform people, transform communities, transform a city, transform the nation. It's not about me, it's about what God does and not others. How do you do that? You have to train up the next generation to take over from you, and like a father does to a son, so that your son can go on and do greater things. The vision that God put in my heart was not just a vision for 30 years. It's a vision for 300 years. It's cathedral vision. That the vision for Watoto Church will outlive me. It will go beyond me. When I'm dead and I'm gone and I'm forgotten, my sons will be carrying on, and my grandsons will be carrying on. And so very early we gathered young people but not anybody. These were young people who were volunteering. These were young people who were not looking for the limelight. These were young people who worked hard. You know, like I saw the worship leaders up here. Like I see some uncles and aunties that are the facilitators or whatever you call them. How much are they getting paid to do this? Nothing. Nothing. Why do they do it? They are the future leaders because they're not doing it for themselves. They're not doing it for money. And I know that the future belongs not to me. The future belongs to my sons. So my job is to raise them up until they're ready so that I can give them what I have so that they can go and they can make it even better. And good sons don't forget their grandfather or their father. They love and they respect and they honor their father, and they seek the advice of their father, and they look to their father for direction, but they don't have to, the father doesn't have to do everything. And that way you can multiply, that way you can grow. And then the sons pass the same on to the grandsons. And it's a generational thing. That's my dream. And so, you know, we have a church today of 20,000 people who come to church on Sunday. There may be 30 that are a part of the church. That's a big church. That's a massive church. And people could say, wow, look at your success. You've been able to build this massive church. That's not my success. My success is this: raising up a generation of young people who will be people of integrity. They will be married. They will be faithful in their marriage. They will be people who are not immoral, committing adultery and fornication and stealing and lying and looking after themselves. But they are giving leadership to the next generation. And that's how we're going to change the nation of Uganda. So my biggest success is these young guys that are around. And that's why they're sitting here, because I want you to know who they are and what their story is.
Fantastic. Let's appreciate God for sharing with us. This is what we're going to now,
Before we do that, I want everybody to stand up and stretch a little bit because I see you getting comfortable.
Yes.
Those in the parade, some of you to struggle. Okay? Everybody stand up and stretch. Put your hands up, both hands up. Now stand on your toes. Exchange a seat with your neighbor very quickly. Exchange a seat with your neighbor. Okay, Pastor Joe, it's back to you.
Awesome. Great. How many of you have been have learned something from what Pastor Gary shared? Just put up your hand, lower right, put it down, up again, down. How many of you would like to hear from the pastors? Up, down. All right, pastors, 2 minutes, because we want to get our part where Pastor Gary shares a little bit about the future. I'll start with Andrew. Andrew, just share with us your encounter that changed your life and connected you to a church.